everybody, and welcome back to yet another episode of Against All Odds. And as I say at the beginning of every podcast, it's purely a selfish podcast because I get to speak to the people that inspire me. And today I am so excited to welcome Steve McGill to the show. How are you, my lovely?
I'm great, and thank you very much for having me.
Well, yeah.
Full disclosure, I'm very nervous, and I'm actually a podcast virgin, so this is my first time, so you need to be gentle with me.
I am. Do you know what? I love it when people say, I've never done a podcast before. It's like, just pretend we're having a chat. It's fine.
How many of your guests has it been that have only been on one podcast then?
You're probably about the fifth or sixth person.
Okay.
Yeah. Because
That's
the
good.
podcast, even though podcasts are everywhere, they're still quite new.
Yeah.
They like to get
Yeah.
news out and information out. So
Then-
there's a lot of people that haven't done a podcast. So don't panic.
No, I won't. The new kind of format as well, where everything's recorded, everything's, obviously audio as well as visual. Like everybody wants to kind of see what people are saying and not just hear what they're saying as well. So that kind of adds another dimension to it as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It feels more personal and like you
Yeah.
get to know the person better, which is great. Now, obviously, we're going to talk about this
Yeah.
in a bit because I noticed you've got one in the background there because I'm so impressed with this.
I'm glad you spotted it there.
Oh yeah, but
There was no strategic placement.
I love it, absolutely love it. So I know you through the coach that we both worked with,
Yeah,
Mr. Paul Mort. And I can remember, God, I can't remember what year it was, and we were at a meetup day. You were there.
It was a massive action day, I think, is
Yes.
what Paul was referring to them at the time. And I think it was February 2023 because it was that September that I came out of the program. So I think that was actually it was the last massive action day. I did attend one of the quarterlies after that, but yeah, so it was February 23. I remember you being there, yeah.
Oh wow, you've got a really good memory.
Well, it was poignant for me as well because the reason I attended that was to try and get a bit of clarity surrounding the business that I'd set up because things weren't really going the way I was hoping. It wasn't getting the traction that I was hoping it was going to get. It was taking a lot out of me, sort of mentally and physically. It was I was projecting that stress onto, my wife, my family. Um, Financially, I was pouring money into it as well, which was kind of coming straight out of my pocket, and I didn't really know where else to go with it. So I'd attended that massive action day to sort of get clarity, basically to say, look, what do you think I should do? And that was when he kind of fired the question back at me, which he does so well, because real coaching isn't about giving someone the answers. It's about asking them the right question to get them to come out with the answer themselves. And the question he asked was, is it adding or is it taking away from your life and your family's life right now? Is it adding to it or is it taking away? And the only answer I could come up with at the time was it's taken away. And he said, well, if it's taken away, he said, I know for me, if I've got something that's in my life and it's not adding anything to my family and it's not adding anything to my own personal journey, then I cut it loose. But the choice is yours. So I made the choice at the time to to shut it down and to just kind of call it quits. So yeah, that was the day. It was end of
Yeah.
February 23. Yeah. Seems
Yeah.
like a long time ago now as well.
Yeah, it does actually. It really does. And that's the first time I met you. And then I found a bit about your background, what and why you joined Paul Mort in the first place. What was going on for you when you were like, right, I need to go and get a coach, and it needs to be Paul Mort?
So it was early 2022. In fact, I think it was actually just before that. I think it was the winter before that. I'd been listening to his audiobook. I was listening to Paul Mort Will Save Your Life. I'd kind of stumbled upon that from other self-help audiobooks that I'd been listening to at the time. And I think through downloading that, I then started following him on social media, signed up to his newsletter. Um, and it was around about that. I think it was that year. So I normally start kind of setting my goals at the beginning of a year. Not so much of a New Year's resolution person, but I've always kind of, for the last sort of 5 or 6 years, I've always kind of set certain goals of what do I want to achieve physically this year? What might I want to achieve as a new skill? So new skill acquisition. What various different things was setting different goals for the previous probably 2 or 3 years. I think since about 2019, I'd started setting sort of physical challenges. So I started out with just running 10Ks. I ran a local 10K. There's one that goes right past my house, and when we moved here, it used to go past every summer, and I was like, I'd like to do that one day. Was never really much of a runner, um, and so I'd set myself the goal of I'm going to run that. I want my kids to be able to see me running past the front door and
Yeah,
do
yeah,
the race, and they did. Yeah, that like it's quite a good local event. A lot of people kind of turn out and cheer everyone around the course. So that was my kind of first that was my first sort of physical challenge that I'd set. The 10K led on to other 10Ks, which then led on to a half marathon, which then went on to a 22 miler that I did. Um, and then the next obvious thing after that was a marathon. So I'd set the goal. I'd actually signed up to run the Edinburgh Marathon in 2020, but obviously, as we know, the
yeah,
the gift that keeps on giving, that was COVID, came along and put a halt to that. So already started training for the marathon, and when it got cancelled, I kind of sacked off my training. I was about 6 weeks in, but I'd built up from a 10K to half to a 20 miler to then preparing for a marathon. So I was about 6 weeks in and I sacked it off. Um, but I kept up strength training. So I kept up, because we were on lockdown, and I'm into my physical fitness, and I always have been since a young age. So I kept up strength training, was doing a lot of sort of high intensity stuff, a lot of high volume. And then I went into more specific sort of strength training from a lower body. And when the date came around for the Edinburgh Marathon, when I should have been running it, I felt the Sunday came around, and I felt a really kind of I felt like I should have kept it up. Should have kept my training up and done what a lot of people were doing, which was a lockdown marathon. A lot of people had kind of decided
yeah,
I'm still going to run it. But because I'd sacked mine off, I was like, there's no way I'll be able to do this. So I think the night before um, it was due to take place, I'd ended up having sitting at home, having some beers, had a few too many, woke up on the Sunday with a terrible hangover, feeling crap about myself physically, feeling crap about myself mentally. Um, And so I kind of decided, a bit weirdly, I decided to get on my spin bike, my exercise bike, and I sat on it, and I basically spent 2 hours on my exercise bike, and I covered over 50K anyway for 2 miles, for 2 hours, sorry, non-stop. I sat on my
yeah,
spin bike, and I kept going and going and going and going. And when I came off of it, I was quite I was quite kind of astonished. I was like, how did I manage to do that? If I could do that, maybe I've still got it in my legs to be able to actually go and run this marathon. And at that point
yeah,
right then, I decided the following Sunday, a week after the Edinburgh Marathon was due to take place, that I was going to map out a route, and I was going to go and run a marathon, come hell or high water. I was getting my marathon done. So I did that. I did it. I managed to do it in about 4.5 hours. And having sacked off the training at 6 weeks in and not done any specific marathon training again, I was quite kind of astonished. Like, how did I manage to do that? Um, which then kind of piqued my interest in specific strength training.
yeah,
That interest then led me to get a strength and conditioning qualification, and I kept setting myself all these physical challenges. I did like a charity challenge one day for combat stress, a charity called Combat Stress,
Yeah.
because I've got a close friend who's a veteran, and he has been quite sort of open in his struggles with PTSD. So I decided I was going to do a charity challenge basically where I covered 75 miles in a day. Um, I did 26 of those miles were on foot. So basically I ran a marathon, but not all at once. So I did four 10Ks. I did a 10K, came home rested for about 2 hours, did another one, did another one, did that four times, and then I
Wow.
finished off on my exercise bike. So I covered 75 miles in 12 hours, which was my challenge. It was a 75-12 challenge. I think I wanted to cover it. And I can't remember why the 75 miles was poignant. Um, but there was a reason it was 75 miles anyway. The long
Yeah.
story short, I'd kept setting myself all these physical challenges and sort of pushing myself and pushing myself. And when it came to the end of that particular year, I realized that it felt like I was running from something, or I was trying to overcome, uh, I guess maybe a sort of shortfall in something in myself. I was trying to find something through the
Yeah.
running, through the physical challenges, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what piece of me was felt like it was missing. Um, on the weekends, I was still drinking too much. I was still kind of felt a little bit depressed, a little bit like I wasn't in control of my emotions.
Yeah.
I felt like I'd obviously gone through, which we'll probably end up speaking about as this conversation kind of progresses. I'd gone through a really traumatic, abusive relationship. I was married, um, and the final 2 years of that marriage was really quite abusive and traumatic. I'd come out of that, um, but as I have found with a lot of things, and as I suppose a lot of men do, they pour themselves into something else. They try to kind of shut it out, or bury it, compartmentalize it, whatever you want to call it, push it to the back of your mind, and,
Yeah.
and pour yourself into something else. And I've been doing these physical challenges, which were great for my physical health, and they were good for my mental health because it was giving me that resilience, that boost that I needed. But that year, that January, I was like, nah, this is fucking enough. Like this is like a form of it's like a form of abuse you're putting yourself
Yeah. Yeah.
through, and you don't know why you're doing it. So this year, you're not going to set yourself a physical challenge like that. You're going to get a handle on your mental health. That's what
Yeah.
you're going to do. This is the year that you finally get to grips with what the fuck is going on with your head, why you keep dipping in and out of these sort of fluctuating moods, these kind of opposite moods. Um, and you need to get a grasp on it. You need to find out what it is, because like I say, I was projecting probably a lot of my insecurities, projecting a lot of my disappointments, projecting feelings that I'd probably repressed for years, things I hadn't spoken about. And they were coming out in other ways. They were coming out in unhelpful ways. As I said, I was drinking too much at the weekends, feeling like I didn't really have control. I actually
Yeah.
had this really weird dream. It was I'd started journaling just in an empty diary, an empty sort of book. I started writing down my thoughts at the end of each day. I would kind of do a little paragraph about how my day had gone. I would score myself out of 10. Um, and this one morning, I woke up after having a really sinister dream. It was really weird. Um, I was in like this. It was like a wildlife park or something like that, and had gone into one of these compounds, and there was all these flamingos that had their heads cut off. I know it sounds bizarre, like it sounds
Yeah.
really weird, Like, well, what were you drinking that night? There was no absinthe involved. Um, and I woke up with this vivid memory of this dream, and then I kind of Googled it, and I'm not a big into sort of dream meanings or anything like that. But the sort of meaning I took from it, from what I read, because everyone has this bias where you read something, you take the meaning that you want to take from it,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you,
absolutely.
you,
Yeah,
you take whatever you most associate with at that time. And at that time, the meaning I took from it was the flamingos are supposed to represent beauty and love in your life. And the idea of the beheading, the decapit, like all these dead flamingos, was the way I read that was, if you don't get a grip of your mental health,
yeah,
you're gonna lose this again. You're gonna lose your sort of family dynamic, because by this time I've met my now wife. We had a daughter together as well, so I've got two girls, one from my previous marriage, and my youngest as well. So this beautiful young family, everything to kind of look forward to. Work was going well. I was working for a really good company at the time, still am. And it was at that point where I was like, enough is enough. You're not going to, abuse your body by doing these stupid physical challenges anymore, and keep running from something that you're not getting a grasp of.
yeah,
And it was at that point that I signed up with Paul Mort. The first one was, I think it was his 28-day challenge. So it was a 28-day journaling challenge. There was little kind of missions, I think, every week. So I did that, which then led into his 90-day program, which then led into signing up for Alliance. So I did his 90-day program twice. I did that back to back. I'd done his 28-day program, and I was in Alliance for a year. So all told, and I suppose including the sort of audiobook kind of guidance as well, about 2 years um, that I'd actually spent with Paul Mort. So that was a starting point. That was why I kind of started, was to get a hold of my mental health, really, to try and get to the bottom of what was I guess going wrong, what wasn't working for me.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's hard to kind of admit to yourself as well when something's in the past and you've been covering it up. It's not easy
yeah.
to admit to yourself, let alone anybody else, that actually you've covered it up and you've not dealt with it. So that must have been a moment of complete confusion and upset for you when you realised actually that you've been covering it all up.
I th I think it was. I think a sense of there's a sense of freedom that comes with admitting stuff to yourself. The
Yeah,
first part is I'm actually working with Dax Moy at the moment. I've just not long started with Dax Moy. I'm doing a 30-day program with him just now.
love him.
Yeah, he's great. I've never done so much deep work. I mean, his work it's so in depth. The depth of the answers that are coming from me right now is something that I felt like I probably could have done with back then, but had I not had the benefit of what I've already gone through, I probably wouldn't have got as much out of it as I'm getting out of it right now.
Yeah,
But he said that something that he says is you must speak the truth. If you can't speak the truth to others, then at least speak it to yourself. At least admit the truth to yourself, even if it's just in your own head. You can't keep, if you keep telling yourself a lie, you diminish your own integrity. And when you diminish your own integrity, you lose your confidence, you lose trust in yourself. And if you can't trust yourself and you've lost confidence, you can't expect anyone else to have trust in you and have confidence in you. And that was kind of the point that I think I was at, was I was fed up of my own bullshit. I was fed up of the going around in circles, kind of banging my head against the wall. So that was the point I was at. That was why I joined Paul's program. Yeah.
yeah. How's it going with Jackson? How long you been in there?
So it's a 30-day program, and we literally just started. It's been a week. I just finished the first week yesterday, but it's intensive. There's a daily mission, which if you're answering the questions properly and you're really kind of going in depth, probably take you an hour, sometimes longer. I get verbal diarrhea when I start writing. I'm quite confident writing, and
Yeah,
I enjoy it. I enjoy the process of writing. I do a bit of poetry and other stuff now and again, and so I enjoy it, and I can spend ages doing it. But I realize I've got a job to do. I've got a day job. I mean, I've got a young family. I've got wife. I've got my own sort of goals and other targets I'm trying to run alongside this.
yeah.
And also, we've had the worst week of snow up here in Aberdeenshire. Like the kids have been off school. The company I work for, their financial year end runs end of January to end of January. So we're in like the last 30 days of our financial year, and we're trying to push all these orders across the line. So I couldn't have probably picked a trickier time to fix the
Yeah,
things. But I'm actually getting so much from it, like the depth of the answers, like I say, because even as coaches, I mean, I don't consider myself to be a coach in the sense that I don't do it as a profession, but I do coach some martial arts. I help out with coaching at the martial arts club that I'm involved in. And the second you become a parent, you're a coach by default, whether you want to be or not. You're you're coaching your kids. And I think even as a coach, it can be difficult to kind of see the bigger picture, and sometimes we still have to do the same work that everybody else does.
yeah,
I think people believe that when you get to a certain point, or it can be very easy on social media to look from the outside in, and believe that everyone has their shit together, because we all post our highlight reels. We all post the best
yeah,
parts. And I mean, I do try to post the darker stuff now and again, but it tends to be I tend to post it when I'm in a darker place myself. It
yeah,
comes
yeah,
out more. I don't post it because I feel like I need to share this because other people might benefit from hearing it. When I'm in a good place, it's like I'm in a shit place. This is how I feel. This is what needs to come out. And
yeah.
I'll kind of purge a lot of stuff, rightly or wrongly. Um, and
You're being real and authentic by
I
doing
think I think so. So the work with Dax is really good. I like that he's got a very kind of spiritual side. He's very his questions take you to a different place because
yeah,
they force you to come up with an answer. And from that answer, you realize I've written stuff this week, and I'm looking at it and thinking, fuck, I've got nowhere to hide now. Like I've just spilled my guts on all this stuff that I've dug up from, I've crawled to the back of the closet and dragged these skeletons out, and and I know what I need to do now to sort of counter those feelings, and I've got nowhere to hide. Like I can't, it's there in sort of plain sight. Um, so I think he forces you to think on a sort of deeper level. He
yeah,
forces you to think very logically about topics that aren't logical, because there was a question I was going to ask you actually as a brain coach. So I saw a post that you did I think it was about a month ago, and it was how to hack your brain chemistry, like how to. So I mean, I don't even know. I couldn't even tell you all the different. I know you've got dopamine, serotonin, and whatever the other ones are.
oxytocin, yeah, and your
Yeah.
endorphins, yeah,
And I was looking at the different ways to kind of hack each different one. And a question I was going to ask you is, if you can hack your brain chemicals, if you can do certain activities to kind of almost turn them on and off, is happiness as simple as a chemical equation? Is it
yeah,
that simple?
yeah,
It is.
yeah.
I mean that's interesting, but it's also it's interesting, but it's also deeply again it doesn't give you anywhere to hide. When you know that stuff, you
No,
then can't
you
you
can
then
literally activate different brain chemicals just by what you think and what
just
you do.
yeah, just from the
Do you know
activity.
what? It's interesting because when I before I took my qualification and got into it all and surrounded by all these neuroscientists, I was into. Have you ever heard of Hugo?
No.
No. So basically, I'll tell you like what's come from it since I've done that. But Hugo is the Swedish Danish way of living.
Uh, yes,
Yeah,
I've seen, I did not know how to pronounce it.
yeah. Nobody does. Yeah,
That
Hugo.
was going to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
one of my other
But
questions. How do you pronounce it?
there's no word that translates into English
Yeah.
to kind of translate it. But Hugo, yeah, and basically it's like Denmark, Sweden, Copenhagen, Stockholm. They keep being voted the happiest countries in the world.
Hmm.
Like their mental health is low. Everybody's kind of really happy, and it just works for them. And the reason is this book came out in it was about 2013 that the CEO of the Institute of Happiness had wrote about Copenhagen, and it was a lovely book. But of course, us Brits and the Americans went, it's all right for them. They've got a different government, they've got this, they've got that. But the science behind it was so simple that we overcomplicate it. So they like traditionally they go to and have coffee. They have games nights with family. They bike ride everywhere. They do like little things. They'll go and meet friends and go to a cake shop. It's tiny, tiny little things.
Yeah.
Like they'll put a pair of fluffy socks on and light a candle. It's not actually those things that are creating the happiness, it's their feelings towards those things that create the happiness. So when they're drinking a cup of coffee, they're completely present where they're smelling the coffee and they know that they like the smell of it. So the
Yeah.
brain releases like serotonin and your oxytocin. So
Right.
it's your thoughts about things that create the brain chemicals.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's that simple.
Yeah. That's really interesting because it's one of the, one of the activities of the sort of worksheets that's in the journal is the sort of happiness on demand worksheet where you literally spend 15, 20 minutes writing down every kind of little activity. And it's not so much feelings, it's not so much writing about feelings, it's writing about the actual activities that you can do on a daily basis, not huge family holidays or
Mm.
bucket list activities, and they're great as well. They're, because they've definitely got a place, but it's what can you do on a daily basis, when you're feeling a bit shit, or do it before you feel like that, plan these things in, plan these little things. So I'm lucky enough where I work that I work really close to a nice little kind of nature reserve. It's literally a 10-minute walk to get there, and then you can
Mm.
spend 20 minutes walking around it. And I 3 days a week, I go for a walk on my lunch break without fail. I do not book meetings. I do not schedule calls. I very, very rarely, I could probably count on one hand the amount of lunch times that I've worked through my lunch. And I realize I'm really fortunate to be in that place to be able to do that because not everybody has that. But I schedule these things in. So I'll go for a walk 3 days a week, and the other 2 days a week I go to the gym. Again, I'm lucky I've got a gym right across the road. I don't have a boss that's breathing down my neck. I work in an office by myself, which has its pros and cons. It can be quite lonely, but at the same time, it affords me the freedom to do things that maybe I otherwise wouldn't be able to do.
Yeah.
Um, and so I do that. I schedule these things in, same as in the morning. The reason the morning routine, which is something I took from Paul Moore, and it's something that I speak about it in the journal. It's a really common thing now to see everybody's morning routine. I mean, there was a funny one doing the rounds a while back, and it was some American guy, and he was literally talking through this morning routine that must have lasted about 2 hours, where
Yes.
they do like him and his wife do half an hour of intensive breath work, then they do some Then they do some deep projections, you know, where they're manifesting, and they do that for 20 minutes, and then they have you know, something else. They do their yoga routine, and then we get the kids up, and then we all have you know, a smoothie that's made from stuff we've just picked from again. It's like, fuck me, like nobody has to eat this shit, you know what I mean? Like if I'm like, if I can get up, so the, the what we were speaking about just before we started, how you said you found the journal, it works from a place of balance, or at least that's what I intended it to be.
Yeah.
Not so intense that you're going at it like hammer and tongs and kind of burning yourself out, but not so sort of lackadaisical, and not such a kind of whimsical approach that you can just breeze through it in 2 minutes. You know, the questions are designed to make you have a think about it, and there's deliberate space for some of the questions for a longer answer, and some of them require a shorter answer, because some of them it should just be, that should be a quick answer, and the other one might take a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But it comes from a place of balance. And the
Yeah.
morning routine thing, I have two. Well, I don't actually have a set morning routine. I have what I call the kind of pick and mix. So I'll have a list of stuff that I can get up and do in the morning, and I know that if I do something mindful, something energizing, and something productive, then I'm off to a good start. And that could be my first win of the day. You know, there are many occasions where when I come to the end of the day and I'm writing down my 3 wins, sometimes my morning routine is one of those wins. It's the fact that I've ticked those boxes.
Yeah.
So if I wake up and I've had a great sleep, I'm full of energy, I'll go and do a morning workout, which might be 20 minutes on my spin bike, or it might be just a short sort of circuit routine, something like that. I'll journal, I'll make some breakfast for the kids. Usually if I'm up, and I'm energetic enough to do a workout, I can then cook the kids something. I'll maybe make them pancakes, or I'll make them French toast or something like that. And then I have those mornings that I wake up where I might have had a heavy workout the day before. I might have got to my bed slightly later because I've been working on something. And I wake up and I'm still fucked. I'm like, I can't, like, I don't want to go in the freezing cold garage this morning. You know what I mean? Like I can feel my body doesn't need to be thrashed at this time of
Yeah.
day. So I'll go and sit on the sofa, I'll put my headphones on, I'll get a cup of coffee, and I'll listen to a guided meditation. Or sometimes I'll just listen to an audiobook, and I'll kind of watch, you know, the world go by outside my window. And that is the equivalent of doing, I mean, that's something mindful, but it also sort of energizes me as well, because it helps you to wake up a bit more gradually.
Mm.
Um, if you're doing a guided meditation, normally it puts you in a much better place mentally. So then when the kids come bouncing down the stairs, well, my 12-year-old doesn't come bouncing down the stairs anymore, but my 6-year-old normally does. Um, when they come down, I'm not that kind of sluggish, grumpy,
Yeah.
you know, don't speak to me, I can't be done with it sort of thing. I'm in a better place to deal with, you know, raising kids.
Yeah.
Um, so it makes sense to schedule these things in. And when you schedule them in, they then become habitual. And the more you practice it, you know this, I don't have to preach to the converted, but for the benefit of people listening, something that Dax reiterated this week is that your brain will latch on to habits that become more valuable than the ones that you previously held. So, am I right? It's the basal ganglia that is the
Yeah.
center of
Yeah.
habit
That's right. Yeah.
habit retention. So
Yeah.
I have learned something this week.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, your brain will naturally gravitate towards the habits that it gets a reward from. So if you can reinforce the fact that it's doing you good, it might take a little while to sort of train your brain to do that, and to discard the old habit of just hitting snooze, for example.
Yeah.
Um, you then start to chase that. You're like, I don't want to stay in bed. I know if I stay in bed and I hit snooze until 7 a.m., I'm going to wake up still probably feeling worse, probably
Yeah.
feeling more shit than, like, if I feel tired now, how am I going to feel at 7 o'clock? So get up, do those things, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, something that kind of energizes you, something mindful like journaling. And when it comes to something productive, I am literally talking about, throwing some breakfast together, writing your to-do list, or a household task. You know what I mean? If you can get something done in the morning, you're kind of off to a good start. Um, but it is
Absolutely.
but it is about balance as well. It's about
It is. Do you know what? It's that we was talking before the podcast because I will say I've tried many journals over the last. Well, I've been journaling altogether just over 4 years.
yeah.
The last 2 years, I've been bitten and bobbing trying different planners, and then I bought yours,
I'm so glad
which
you
I
did.
started 1st of January, and I will say it is without a shadow of a doubt the best journal I've ever used.
I'm really humbled that you think so. Like really
Uh,
humbled. That means a lot.
no problem at all. I give credit where credit's due, mate, because neuroscience massively backs journaling. Like I'm literally screaming at everybody um in the groups where I coach. It's like honestly, it'll take you 5 minutes in the morning. It's not a massive job,
Yeah,
but it will change your life.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
repetition,
yeah.
because I journaled for about 2 years and then I had a break for 6 months. Have you ever had a break from journaling?
Not since I started. Uh,
Don't.
yeah, not
Don't.
since I started.
No, because when you journal, and I always say to people, when you start journaling, you can't physically or mentally feel the benefits of it until you stop.
Yeah.
And then you realise the benefit it had.
Okay.
Because then everything kind of turns to shit. Like your brain can't focus on, well, it just focuses on everything you don't want. It's like it gets overwhelmed very easily
Yeah.
and you just feel pretty shitty. So that's when I knew. I was like, right, okay, journaling really helps. And then obviously I did the neuroscience qualification and they massively back it up for the reason that you're pointing your brain to actually what you want in life and how you want to feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my happy list has gone in the front of it. And I will say as well, going back to that, I do at least 2 things off my happy list per day.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I tend to do that as well. So if I am walking, I'll tend to listen to a podcast or an audiobook. So that's kind of two things at the same time because you get something from a podcast or an audiobook, depending on what it is. I like to listen to a lot of not memoirs, what's the other word? Like not memoirs, what's the word I'm looking for? Autobiographies, for
Yeah,
example. Yeah. So I like to take people that inspire me and listen to their autobiographies and kind of listen to what they went through because a lot of the people we look up to, celebrities and things like that, they've been through their own journeys. Everyone's been through their own journey and to get to the place that they were. And not many people have reached the heights of success without real struggles. And it's good to kind of listen to people that you kind of put on a pedestal as your idols
yeah,
come from humble beginnings. And
yeah,
when you listen to their stories, it's really inspiring. So I get the benefit of going for a walk and listening to somebody's inspiring story at the same time. And I also find as well that giving myself that mental space so I've got quite a sort of high stress, demanding job. It requires a lot of concentration for the time that I'm at my desk. Um, so you need that break, you need that kind of switch off, the reset. And I'll often find as well that if I'm struggling with how to prioritize something at work, by the time that I've gone back, or by the time that I've done my walk and I've gone back to work, I've kind of figured it out and I know what priorities things need to be in without ever really thinking about it. It just kind of comes to you as you're walking, you're like, oh, this is what I need to do. That's what I need to do. When you stop and you give yourself that mental space, your brain kind of figures it out in the background, or at least that's what I've found works for me.
yeah. Another thing I like as well is that you set goals in different areas of your life, because I think I've definitely been guilty of it before. You kind of set a goal in one area of your life, so it could be your business or
Yeah,
your health, and then while you're really focused on that, the rest of your life behind you is turning to shit
is all falling, yeah, is
because
all
you've got
falling by
all
the
your
wayside.
focus on that one goal.
Yeah, yeah. So that's obviously something that kind of closely resembles Paul Mort's planner. So obviously was first introduced to the idea of prompted journaling from using Paul Mort's journal, and that kind of shaped, I guess, a lot of the structure and a lot of the inspiration behind the Clear Intent journal. And yeah, obviously something I write about, that there's a lot of explainers in the book. There's quite a lot of text in the first sort of 10 pages where I go through my explanation of things. It's not necessarily a scientific, it's, the way I explain things are purely from my perspective. They're not a scientific example, for example. They're not scientific. They're what works for me. They're my interpretation of the specific areas of life and how they fit into the overall picture of your physical and mental and your spiritual well-being.
Mm.
And it's trying to balance that out. I use an analogy which I actually heard from someone else, and I forget who it was from, that kind of likens it to if you had a table that was only balanced on three legs and you suddenly kicked one out, the table's going to come crashing down, it's going to topple. And if that is your approach to life, that you're going to just define yourself purely through your career, for example, you're very, and there's nothing wrong with being career driven. I'm not saying anything against that, but you're purely pouring yourself into your career. You're the first one in the door and you're the last one to leave, and your health is suffering. You've got no social life, you've got no relationship to kind of back that up. Um, if that job suddenly disappeared, how do you define yourself?
Yeah,
Where does your identity come from? Because we all attach certain aspects of our identity to the job we do, to the relationships we have, to our physical appearance and the way we look. Um, we attach it to everything, and we attach meaning to those things as well. So it's really about having the five pillars, the clear pillars, as I call them: clarity, leisure, energy, assets, and relationships. Is what do they mean for you? What is your clarity in terms of your sense of sort of purpose, for example, your values.
yeah,
Most people, when you speak about values, say, if you say, what are your values? It's truth, justice, and honor. And it's like, those aren't really values.
no, no.
Those are more like principles.
Yes,
That's like stuff from the Bible. Those are
yeah,
principles of what it is to be a good person, is be truthful, be
yeah.
honest.
It's like we're all hardwired to say that when somebody
Yeah,
says what do we value, we all come up with the same things, and everybody's
yeah.
going, yeah, me too.
Nobody's going to say I value bullshit. And well, some people might, I mean, value bullshit. Although your actions demonstrate that. A lot of us spend way too much time on Facebook, so we probably do value a certain amount of bullshit.
Yeah,
But your values really are where you prioritize your time, your resources. So like your money, your energy, um, your I guess your focus, where you're actually putting your focus on things.
yeah.
So when you know what you value, so I mean, for me, for example, I value my family. So my wife and kids, I value my relationships with my family. I value my physical health. I value my physical appearance as well. I'm not afraid to say I take pride in how I look. I spend time at the gym. I'm not a total gym. I spend 2 days a week at the gym nowadays, which isn't bad.
Hmm.
But I do a lot of walking. I eat mindfully. I eat quite intuitively. I don't sort of count calories and macros and all that stuff. I've done that, but I have enough of a sound knowledge in my own nutrition to know what I need at a certain time. So I value my physical appearance, my health, my family. I value being useful at work, being an asset to the company that I work for. You know, those are values.
Yeah.
So when you know what you value, you can then prioritize them. And when you can prioritize them, you can balance them out. The other thing that you can do is you can then start to attach a sense of purpose to those things. So purpose for me is a at the moment it's a bit of a contentious issue for me because this is something I've been working with Dax on is my longer term purpose because something that's evident on the journal is it has a compass and a star above it, and
Yeah.
it's meant to represent a guiding star, not in a religious type of way, but definitely I'm quite spiritually minded, although I don't follow any particular spiritual sort of practice.
Hmm.
But the idea that you have something that is being a kind of guiding light to you, a principle, a set of values, and a kind of overriding purpose. And something I struggled with when I sort of quit my business and I decided to cut my business loose back in 2023 was my sense of purpose
Yeah.
and where that was coming from. And one thing that Paul Mort is a big advocate of is having a compelling vision of your future. And for the last sort of 18 months, I've really struggled, like, and I
Mm.
mean really struggled to to have a compelling vision in my future. I know what I need to do day to day. I know what I want to achieve this quarter, and I know what I'd like to achieve in a year's time. And I also kind of have an idea of where I would like to be by the time I reach 50. You know, look, by the time I'm 50, I don't want to be working the job I'm in right now. I've got ideas of where I would like to be, but it's in between that. It's like the 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
What's the kind of plan? And I was putting so much pressure on myself to try and force a compelling vision of my future that it became counterproductive.
Yes. Yeah.
It actually started dragging me the other way, where I'm like, what's the fucking point in me doing this? What's the point in me, you know, doing my journal? You know, what's the point in the journal? What's the point in my physical appearance if I have no idea what my guiding light is? And something that I write about in the purpose section of the book is that the conclusion I've come to, or at least the conclusion that I sit with at the moment, my truth as it is right now, is that purpose doesn't have to come from a longer term vision, as in you may be working a day job that you're not thrilled about, but not everybody has that luxury. And feel free to call me out if this is a story and I'm speaking bullshit here. Because something I was going to say to you beforehand, if I say anything that sounds like a story or sounds like bullshit, don't let me get away with it.
Okay, mate.
I certainly don't feel, at least the people that I encounter, that, you know, my friends and family, don't necessarily have the luxury, maybe the courage, maybe the ambition and the drive to just quit a day job and go after something that is deeply meaningful and purposeful to yourself that also generates an income.
Yeah.
Some of us have to eat that frog. We have to go to work, we have to do the day job, we have to bring in bring in the money to keep the roof over the heads. And so it's finding purpose out with that.
Yeah.
It's finding purpose in your relationship. It's finding purpose in your physical health. It's
Yeah.
finding purpose in where can I add value to the people I encounter? You know, what can I do? For me, the most recent one obviously was the journal, but how do you attach that purpose to the things that you value? And that then becomes your driving factor. Your purpose is the goals that you set around the things that you value. And
Yeah.
if those goals are only 90 days ahead, then do you know what? That's okay. Because by the time you get to the end of that 90 days, you then have the next kind of 90 days and you then start to build on that.
Yeah.
So something in the journal, for example, the your clarity. some people might look at it and think, right, I've got five pillars here, and I need to try and set a goal in each of them. Just don't know where to start. You know, the clarity goal could literally be journal for 90 days in a row.
Yeah.
Try not to miss any days. Try and find those 3 wins, and
Yeah.
that is your goal. Your the with the energy pillar, for example. Energy is basically made up of your health and fitness, your overall well-being, health and well-being. So your physical fitness, your sleep and your recovery, you know, your nutrition and things like that. And if you're someone that stays up till 11:30 every single night and then you're getting up feeling like shit in the morning, your goal could just be to get your sleep. You know what I mean? Get yourself a decent sleeping routine, journal every day. In terms of, you know, your assets, it could just be, you know what, start putting a bit of cash aside, stop fucking spunking so much money on shit you don't need and online
Yeah.
shopping because you feel miserable, and, you know, put a bit of money aside, pay down your debt, because I'm as guilty of that as everybody else. We thrash some stuff on the credit card and it builds up, and it's like, before you know it,
Yeah.
you're staring down the barrel of a credit card bill. So your asset target might be just to get a grip on your finances a little bit better than what you are right now. And then your relationships, you know, choose one person in your life that is meaningful to you. Find, not necessarily find the ideal, but find the little gaps, find the little pieces that are missing that you can build on every single day, and try and sort of set yourself a target that's going to stretch you a little bit, but
Yeah.
not be overwhelming. Because I think as well there's a tendency to, and something I've found as well, and I think something you've found, the the sort of hustle culture,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever that is, can be can be quite overwhelming. The sort of pressure to have to do more, to be more. Everybody wants to be more than average these days. It's going to get to the stage where, like, average used to be here, but now everybody's chasing more than average. So average is going to level up and everyone's going to be chasing more and more and more. So it's like you've got to take a snapshot in the moment.
You
And
know
that,
what? Yeah, it's so right, and that's what I love about your journal, because obviously goal setting is great for our brains.
yeah,
But when I ever talk about anything brain related, there's a plus side and there's a negative side, and goal setting actually falls into that. So yes, it's great for us to have goals, but if you get into the mindset of all these goals have got to be all massive and nice and glittery,
yeah,
then the next quarter you do it's bigger and brighter and glittery.
yeah,
You're just chasing your ass all the time,
yeah,
and then we've got a dopamine problem.
yeah. Is that what that is? It's the you're chasing the high of achieving
It's
the
like
outcome.
constant, yeah,
Yeah,
constant, and yes, well, I mean, I'm doing a dopamine training tomorrow. Actually, dopamine is good for our brains, but it's also bad for our brains as well.
yeah,
It's constant. We need rewards. So actually, having goals that are purpose, like for you, and it could be like you say, it could be that you're going to fix your sleep, or you're going to, like another one, it could be like you're going to save a little bit of money. These are very reachable.
yeah,
You know, they're not huge where it's completely out of depth and you're just chasing and chasing and chasing and you're piling it all on. So that is another reason why I like your journal, because it's midway between hustle and doing
yeah,
nothing.
yeah, yeah. It is, again, it's something that it sort of mentions is, it, you know, don't beat yourself up too much. If you don't hit them all, and there's no magic formula for setting goals. You have to ask yourself a bunch of questions. There's some questions in the journal that, where do you want to, where do you want to go on holiday, for example? Where do you really want to go on holiday? What kind of activities have you always wanted to try
Yeah.
that you've maybe been afraid to try? What's something you're already good at, but you want to get a bit better at it? What's something that you're terrible at, but you want to get better at? What's something you admire from the people that are in your life, the people that have influence in your life? What do you admire about them? And what is it that you look up to? What is it you want people to look up to when they speak about you, what would you like to go into a room and be able to share stories about? If you had to go into a room full of people and just kind of break the ice with a story, what
Yeah.
would you love that to be? So they don't have to be this comes from I suppose there's different schools of thought. Some people believe that the goals you set should be almost impossible, because if you don't set impossible goals, you'll never break free from the zone of kind of mediocrity, or
Yeah.
the comfort zone. You'll never break free from that. But as you say, there's also there's finding the balance within. You have to take into consideration what your resources are. What
Yes.
can you actually pull together? If you decide you want to start £1 million business, great, but you need to be able to pull from certain resources. That's not to say you can't find those people, but if
Yeah.
you've got a lot of other stuff that's taking up your time, you've got other commitments, you've got other responsibilities, you have to you have to have some kind of realism with this sort of stuff, setting goals, so that you aren't left completely overwhelmed, and then you're in that kind of pit of, well, I can't achieve any of my goals, so what's the point
Yeah.
in doing it?
Yeah. So you
um,
either fall off the wagon or completely burn out.
well,
It's
that's
sort of
it.
like,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're no use to anybody if you completely kind of destroy yourself. You end up, financially kind of ruined because you've poured all your money into something that just didn't work out. There has to be a kind of cut-off point. And that's what kind of comes in as well, is when you're reviewing the journal, you're reviewing your goals. You got to find out, is this actually working for me? Is it adding what I thought it was going to add to my life, or is it actually becoming a burden? And it's not a cop out. Some might say that's to making an excuse and you're kind of hiding from it. There's an element of that. But once you've actually been journaling, you don't discover this stuff. You don't realize when you're making an excuse, and there's a fine line between making an excuse and giving yourself permission.
yeah.
Giving yourself permission is normally done in advance, when you say, I give myself permission to go out this weekend, have a few beers, where, I'm going to eat the steak and fries, and I'm going to have
Yeah.
the beers and the cocktails, and I'm giving myself permission. And then there's the other version of giving myself permission, where I got pissed last night, didn't mean to have that many drinks, but I give myself permission. Like, no, that's an excuse. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
you kind of went off track a little bit. So just realize one from the other.
Yeah. 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 It's that perception thing, isn't it?
And having the the struggle I've had as well with goals is, I'm always trying to reach that thing of, you want to be content, you want to be happy, and that has to be right now. You can't project happy. Well, you can't project happy in the future. You can only be happy right now. You can be happy in the moment what you're doing, and you can be content in the moment what you're doing. So how can you set goals and targets for things you want to achieve, and kind of tell yourself that there's a mission to be had, and be content at the same time? There's a conflict there,
Yeah.
and I struggled, and I still struggle with the balance of that. Is, where's the line between achieving the sort of inner peace that I guess we probably all are seeking? At the end of the day, you want that inner peace, that sense of contentedness, that sense of happiness. Um, but you have to, I think for me, pursuing goals where it adds value to the things that you value is
Yeah.
is the kind of key. If you
It's,
can if you can attach your goals to the things that you really value, that give you a sense of purpose, and that add to your life and enhance your view of the world, make you a happier person all around, that's the kind of sweet spot. They're
yeah.
not Goals are not to be used as a big stick to beat you over the head with, because
When you've not reached them, yeah.
you've gone off target. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think they set goals for me. They're like a little way marker. They're like a little kind of pointer in the right direction to make sure you're on the path that you say you want to be on, in terms of, I'm being the person I want to be. I'm showing up as the husband. I'm showing up as the dad. I want my kids to see I'm
Yeah.
showing up as the friend and the colleague that I would be proud to show up as, and not just a somebody with kind of zero ambition. And in that, hopefully, you can take the contentedness and the happiness from knowing that you're pursuing your values and you're doing your best, rather than it being a tick box exercise.
Yeah, I love that. I've got one last question for you that I ask everybody, and it makes everybody really uncomfortable.
I've prepared for this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've done my homework. I've been listening to your podcast for about the last week. So like wrote a list. I'm not getting caught out with this shit. No way.
What? I've been called all names under the sun on some podcast at the end. I tell you. Right, Steve, tell me 3 good things about yourself.
Hmm. I'll have to think about this one, Amy. Um, right, so I'm growth orientated. So
Yeah,
I have a growth mindset, and I love that about myself, that
yeah,
I'm willing to do the work to set goals and to go after things that I really value in life. So that's probably number one. I'm growth orientated, and I love that.
yeah,
Number two, I'm resilient. I've been through enough shit in my life. We've all got our own skeletons in the closet. We've all been through the shit. And we're probably all more resilient than we give ourselves credit for. And so today I'm giving myself credit for my resilience. It's got me to where I am, and right now it's not a bad place to be. Um, and the third one is I'm quick to apologize, because I fuck up a lot, and I I make a lot of mistakes. I say things I don't mean sometimes, and I'm trying to get better at it. Um, but when I do, I'm quick to apologize, and I'm quick to try and set that right. And I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong. So that's probably my third thing. Yeah, I'll go with that.
I love that. And I can't believe you actually spied and knew what I was going to say.
I've been listening to the podcast. You ask it at the end of it, and everyone acts so surprised. And I'm like, have you not listened to this? You're like, surely you would listen to the podcast before you go on. So I've been doing my homework. Yeah, I'm a
Oh,
prepper.
that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I honestly do recommend this to absolutely anyone and everyone. I will be, everybody I coach, I will be getting them to get this journal without a shadow of a doubt.
Awesome.
So you can get it on Amazon, can't you? I'll post the link as well under the
Yeah.
podcast comments.
So at the moment, it's self-published on Amazon. At the moment, there's no plans to kind of take it off the Amazon platform and start doing all that myself. It's very convenient at the moment. Amazon
Yeah,
can post it all out. So yeah, if you want a copy, straight onto Amazon, Clear Intent Journal should come up, and should get it within a couple of days. I do have a Facebook page, which I'm not sure what I'm doing with yet. So if anyone wants to find me on social media, it's just Steve McGill. I don't have a business page as such just yet, but the journal's where it's at. So Amazon for the journal, journaling for the win.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think. Well, do you know what? You did really well on your first podcast.
Thank you very much. I feel like I went off on tangents early on, and I kind of bumbled my way through some of it, but
Yeah. Do you
hopefully
know
managed
what?
to pull it back at the end.
People always apologise for me for talking too much, and it's like, well, that's what I've got you on here for.
Yeah,
Get it all the time. Well, thank
absolutely.
you for being an amazing guest.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been
All
a
right,
pleasure.
take care.